Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think by now, because you've presided over this House for over a year, you are aware of the character of most of us in this House. Mr. Speaker, in your communication about the President's address, you reminded this House of the requirement of the standing orders that in an address to the House, the head of state shall be heard in silence. Now, Mr. Speaker, knowing myself and knowing the President, Mr. Speaker, I chose not to attend the President's address to the National Assembly because I knew for a fact that at the first instance where I felt he was giving misleading information to the country, I would not be able to manage myself to keep quiet. I would have been strongly pushed to say something. And Mr. Speaker, I would have run afoul of the rules of this House. And although the Speaker of the Senate might be lenient because they know me, I was not very sure about the Speaker of the National Assembly, whether he would extend some of the courtesies that you have extended us in this House. Mr. Speaker, I suspected that if I went for that speech, I probably would be serving now an expulsion from the House for a minimum of 6 months. And I will go into the reasons why, Mr. Speaker, I did not trust the head of state to paint the true picture of the state of the nation. In my mind, Mr. Speaker, the state of the nation is the state of the people. Senator Mungatana has spoken very eloquently here about what I did. I joined a group of friends, and you will indulge me here, in playing a drinking game. Mr. Speaker, the rules of the game are very simple. Every single time you thought that a statement that was untrue, or even partially untrue, from the head of state, you had to take a shot of whiskey. Mr. Speaker, needless to say, by the end of the President's speech, we were extremely inebriated because of the half-truths and open lies that we believe the President told before the House of Parliament. And I will get into the specifics. Mr. Speaker, my expectation has always been that during a State of the Nation address, because the Constitution requires it.
What is your point of order, Senator Mungatana?
I know the Honorable Sifuna could be very passionate, but is the use of the word open lies, referring to the speech by His Excellency the President, parliamentary? And if not, can he withdraw and restrict to parliamentary language, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Sifuna, I think the use, you can still express yourself without necessarily using such words that may not be parliamentary.
Mr. Speaker.
And I know exactly, you understand exactly what I'm saying.
Mr. Speaker, replace every time I've used the word open lies with untruths or misleading or what other synonym is there? Yeah, I think I do not mean...
Or not factual.
Or non-factual, yes, Mr. Speaker. And I will demonstrate point by point what I thought was not factual or was misleading. Mr. Speaker, my expectation with these speeches, ever since I became acquainted with the Constitution, is that you must address yourself to the steps taken, very specific, steps taken and progress achieved in realizing the values under Article 10. And I was specifically looking out for the address to address 3 values set out under Article 10. The first one, Mr. Speaker, is national unity and inclusiveness, which I will take together. Mr. Speaker, we live in an era where we are being told every single day that, in fact, if you did not vote for this government, you have no shares in this government, and that you should expect nothing at all. What I expected the head of state to do is to tell us that ever since those pronouncements have been made, I have taken certain steps to rein in members of my administration who might not understand what Article 10 speaks about when it speaks of inclusivity and national unity, and that we give an undertaking, or he gives an undertaking, that we will not hear about that issue of shareholding anymore. Mr. Speaker, the first untruth that I want to invite this House to agree with me that I encountered is in paragraph 9 of the President's speech, where he acknowledges that it is the duty of all of us as leaders to listen keenly and comply with the people's wishes. Now, that is where I took my first shot, Mr. Speaker, because I know for a fact that Kenyans have spoken over many, many policies that this administration has put in place, including the taxation measures that have been imposed through the Finance Bill of 2023. But this government has chosen to ignore the people's pleas and, in fact, to do the exact opposite of what the people have been asking it to do. Mr. Speaker, the other value that I wanted him to speak to is the question of the steps taken by his government and the progress that has been achieved in strengthening democracy. Now, here I went for a double shot, Mr. Speaker, and I will explain why. The first reason, Mr. Speaker, and Honorable Khalwale has spoken very eloquently about what their generation did in order for them to achieve the freedoms that we enjoy during this time, Mr. Speaker, including the freedom of speech. And I suspect, Khalwale, even the freedom of demonstration and the right to picket. I saw myself, leaders of the church, being bludgeoned here. As a child, I saw those pictures of Reverend Joya in the streets here being bludgeoned by police officers just because he was exercising his right to protest. This same regime, this same government, Mr. Speaker, is doing the very same things. In fact, this year alone, it has bludgeoned more people than Moi bludgeoned during the time for multi-party democracy. As a leader of the opposition, I know that I have a right under Article 35, a right that Boni and his generation fought very strongly for me to be able to express my disaffection with the policy of government by protesting, by picketing. Now, I don't know how I can define picketing for my brother, Honorable Khalwale, but picketing includes putting a sufuria on your head. That sufuria on my head is not the solution I'm proffering, because I had proffered a solution that at the moment, because Kenyans are going through a difficult time, Mr. Speaker, please retain the subsidies. Please do not increase the taxation on fuel. Those are the proposals that came from my mouth, Mr. Speaker. So that when you see me putting a sufuria on my head, that is not the solution. That is me picketing and drawing your attention to the solutions I'm proffering. But you have refused to listen to the people of Kenya. And yet the president would come and stand before the hallowed House of Parliament and say that he acknowledges that as a leader, he has a responsibility to listen to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, contrary to what many people believe, I actually admire Senator Khalwale, because I have studied his history. You are some of the people who have inspired some of us to come to this house. We know your skills as a debater. But Mr. Khalwale, Senator Khalwale, sometimes I understand your position as a whip in this house of the majority. You are handicapped. Some things you don't want to say openly here on the floor or even in public gatherings. Senator Khalwale, those confessions you've made here, that in fact in your stellar career as a politician, you have never been as unpopular as you are right now. And it is not because of your undoing. I honestly believe Khalwale has not changed. The only thing that has changed, Senator Khalwale, is that you are defending the indefensible. The people of Malinya, I can confirm, they still love their senator. But they don't agree with the policies of the government that you support. And I wish, Mr. Speaker, the same admissions that have been made by Senator Khalwale on this floor would come from the mouth of a president. That he acknowledges that, in fact, some of the policies that he has put in place have made his government unpopular because they do not resonate with what Kenyans want to do. Mr. Speaker, let me now come to what I consider untruths, misleading statements about the state of the nation. Mr. Speaker, the president spoke about many things. And these matters have been fact-checked by many people, including reputable media houses here, on if indeed what he was saying is true. Let me start by the easiest, because, Mr. Speaker, outside there, I'm known as the permanent representative of the people of Kenya on matters of unga. And it is because, as a lawyer, I think I am an authority on food. Mr. Speaker, the president said in his own speech that a packet of flour, maize meal, is now retailing between 145 and 175. And he added a very clever rider, depending on the brand, down from 250. Mr. Speaker, I want to submit to this House that that statement is in fact not true. I have conducted my own research in supermarkets here in Nairobi. The average price of unga is still 200 shillings for a packet of 2 kgs. And this is something, because we host you here in Nairobi, you are welcome to do. Mr. Speaker, in previous arguments, I have tried to convince this Senate that, in fact, the definition of food security includes a reference to people's preferences. If, for instance, my household has been eating jogo, unga, and I was buying it at 100 shillings, and it goes to 250, you cannot then try to convince me to start buying another brand that I have never heard of, that I don't know where it comes from. That now, buy this one because it is 150. The preferences of people have to be included in food security. You cannot therefore tell us that depending on the brand you want, you can buy unga at 100. I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, any single thing in this country is contraband, including some of the liquor that we undertook or took during the president's speech in that famous game I've been referring to. There's an industry that has sprung up called Kariobangi, light industries. We cannot vouch for the authenticity of everything, but Kenyans can expect quality from certain brands, and that's what they go for. Mr. Speaker, we were told about the question of subsidizing the price of fertilizer. Now, it is public record that, in fact, some of this subsidized fertilizer came to this country as a donation from the government of Russia. And this is something that the government of Russia confirmed to us publicly. If you receive something for free, you cannot tell us you have reduced its price. It's that simple. You got it for free. You cannot tell me you have reduced its price. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, this is another obvious untruth by the head of state on the question of fertilizer.
Honorable Senator is misleading this House. He is talking about free fertilizers. Can he provide evidence, table this evidence before this House?
Senator for Nairobi, can you substantiate your claim? And if you cannot, you proceed to withdraw it.
Mr. Speaker, I will request for time to table evidence from the speeches from the leadership of the Federal Republic of Russia that they in fact gave a donation of fertilizer.
So when do you intend
So give me time. You can give me until tomorrow. I will table
tomorrow.
it. Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. Let me proceed to something else that I consider.
What is the point of order, Senator Boni?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I wish not to offend you, but because we have been engaged on wild goose chase in this House before in terms of substantiation, caution them that he should not come here with newspaper reports. He should come here with evidence, authenticated extracts of speeches of the leadership of Russia, which we know.
Senator Boni, you cannot teach the chair on what to communicate. I know exactly what amounts to a substantiation, and whatever the senator will bring must, of course, meet that standard. If it won't, the chair will rule. Proceed, Senator Sifuna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is another half-truth, Mr. Speaker, that was spoken on the floor of the House, that in fact 56,000 new teachers had been employed this year alone. Now, the problem there is that on the face of it, it appears like the head of state knows what he's talking about. But data from the TSC itself indicates that up to 80% of that 56,000 teachers were hired on short-term contracts, Mr. Speaker. And only 20% of those are permanently employed. That is something you need to say to the state, to the nation, so that we know the true state of affairs when it comes to the hiring of our teachers. Mr. Speaker, let me continue. He also announced that in September, or that in June of this year, his administration would employ 103 community health promoters. And we saw him flagging off distribution of 100,000 kits to be used by those people. Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that that is not true. That is not true. In fact, counties are supposed to identify the people to be recruited as CHPs, and that progress is ongoing. So you cannot claim something has happened, yet it has not happened, just to massage the numbers and appear like your government is working. Next, Mr. Speaker, he told us, I am on the speech. These are contents of the president's speech. I'm not
what
making
is the
up
point
anything.
of order?
Thank you, Speaker. I had to interrupt the Senator for Nairobi. The 100,000 community health promoters were launched on
Are you
Mashujaa Day.
on a point of information
Yes.
or a point of
Is
order?
in order, Mr. Speaker, to mislead the House without giving us evidence to support his claim that we did not recruit 100,000 community health promoters. We did.
Mr.
Senator
Speaker,
Sifuna, is your assertion factual?
Mr. Speaker, I represent a county.
If indeed,
I represent a county.
Senator Sifuna, if it's factual, let it form part of those factual claims that you
Please,
substantiate.
I will substantiate whatever is required for me to substantiate. Because, Mr. Speaker, the truth is the only weapon we have against the lies that are there in the world. Mr. Speaker, let me go to the question of recruitment of healthcare workers. Told us 20,000 healthcare workers have been employed. This one is also not true. In fact, the reports we have are that only about 1,200 interns were deployed to hospitals since the beginning of the year, not the 3,394 that the President spoke about. Let me conclude, Mr. Speaker, on the question of Wi-Fi hotspots. And this one, if you want me to substantiate, I will take you to the hotspot. We were told that he has set up Wi-Fi hotspots across the country, including here in Nairobi County, in markets such as Muthurwa and city markets. This one, I will just invite you to carry your devices to city market. It is walking distance here, Mr. Speaker. And you will see that, in fact, those things do not work. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the famous one of Hustler Fund.
Senator Sifuna, are you
Yes.
saying it wasn't, it's not working or it wasn't provided?
Mr. Speaker, I have told this House on previous occasion that, in fact, I was there. I have 20 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I was present with the CS for ICT at City Market on the day of the launch. Weeks later, I was being called by traders there that that thing no longer works, and that is the current situation today. Mr. Speaker, let me finish with the question of the Hustler Fund. First, people need to understand one thing, that what Mama Mboga needs is the purchasing power of their customers to grow or to be retained at the level at which it was. It is pointless for you to give Mama Mboga a loan to expand, quote unquote, their business, and yet you are raiding the pockets of our customers in a way that it is impossible for them to spend money at Mama Mboga's stall. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the CBK data shows that the default rate of the loans borrowed under this Hustler Fund is higher than the ones of commercial banks. Mr. Speaker, of the 10.2 billion shillings that is outstanding.
What is your point of order, Senator Veronica?
The Senator for Nairobi, Senator Sifuna, in order to indicate that the default rate is as he's reading. Should he not issue substantiated reports, Mr. Speaker? These are based on facts, and we are allowing too many things to pass, Mr. Speaker, without demanding for accuracy of the information that is being given to this House. Mr. Speaker, the Senator for Nairobi would need to substantiate that fact on the Hustler Fund and the loan repayment and the default rate, and also substantiate the fact that the Wi-Fis are not working, Mr. Speaker, sir. And to substantiate on the Wi-Fi, he will need a technical report to actually show, to actually express that these Wi-Fis are not working. Mr. Speaker, I am aware that those Wi-Fis are working, even the one in Nairobi. And if it is not so, then let him bring a substantiation report based on fact, technical, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna, on the Wi-Fi, you may not be able to substantiate right away.
Mr.
Are
Speaker,
you able to substantiate on the default, on the loan repayment?
Mr. Speaker, you can give me some credit as the person who represents the traders at these markets. I am in constant communication with these people. We are not talking about Wi-Fi in Kiambu. We are talking about Wi-Fi in Nairobi, the people I represent.
Very well.
If you want
very
to
well,
substantiate whether Wi-Fi is working, you go there and try it.
Senator
You go there
Sifuna,
and try it.
Senator Sifuna, there is a point of order that has been raised.
The second one,
And
Mr.
I'm
Speaker.
proceeding to
Yes.
make a ruling on it.
The second one.
One, this is my ruling on the point of order raised by Senator Veronica. Just take a seat. One, you've been called upon to substantiate on the issue of Wi-Fi. That you cannot do right away because certainly you need a technical report. So again, you will bring that substantiation tomorrow as you substantiate on the earlier point of order. Then there is some facts you need to substantiate the issue of default on repayment of the loans from the hustler vis-a-vis the commercial loans. Are you able to substantiate right now? Proceed to substantiate.
Mr. Speaker, you know, we should not engage here in what we call kizungu mingi. This is a term of art we use here in Nairobi. That when people are unable to explain to the wananchi what they have done, they want reports, technical reports. What technical report does a trader in Muthurwa need to know that when he tries to log in, the thing is not working? On the question, yes, on the question of the default rate, yes. Mr. Speaker, these are the figures from the CPK. Mr. Speaker, can I be allowed to proceed? I am the most interrupted senator in this House. For heaven's sake.
Order, honorable senators. Allow the senator, you have raised a point of order, let the senator substantiate. Thereafter, you will rise on your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the question of the default rate is a question of math and your capacity to comprehend math. 10.2 billion shillings outstanding as loans, 3 billion out of that, Mr. Speaker, which is almost 30%, is listed as non-performing loans. Now, you don't need to be a genius to know what non-performing loans mean. Then you take that figure of 30%, Mr. Speaker, compare it with the figure of default in commercial banks. You will see which one has a higher default rate. And I will provide that evidence, in fact, tomorrow, of what the current default rate for commercial loans are vis-a-vis the default rate.
That's exactly what
Senator that is very simple for me to do, so Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let me conclude.
What is your point of order, Senator Kenya?
Mr. Speaker, the Senator of Nairobi cannot assume or pretend, Mr. Speaker, he monopolizes Muthurwa market. The President of the Republic of Kenya, William Samoei Ruto, represent those people. They voted for him, the way they voted for him. So he cannot pretend by saying, every time he's standing here to speak, Mr. Speaker, to say I represent those people. They call me every day. They call the President as well. They call us as well, Mr. Speaker.
What is the point of order?
The point of order, Mr. Speaker, is 105, Mr. Speaker. He's misleading this House.
Senator Sifuna, in reference to the people of Nairobi, you have to know that the people of Nairobi voted for 6 leaders. All those 6 leaders represent the people of Nairobi, including His Excellency the President. Kindly proceed.
Very well, Mr. Speaker. It is also important for you to note that of the 6 people who were elected in Nairobi, I received the highest votes of those 6 people, including more votes than the President in Nairobi. So I speak for more people than him. Mr. Speaker, let me finalize by saying, unfortunately for me, I don't get the privilege of putting, televising my telephone conversations with the traders in Muthurwa and the traders in the other markets, Mr. Speaker, like the President was pretending to do. But the truth of the matter is these people communicate with their leaders. Let me finalize, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sifuna, you need to start using parliamentary language.
What's unparliamentary?
You know, when you say the President was pretending.
Mr. Speaker, that was obviously a staged call. Everybody can see in the video. It was a staged call, and we should call it for what it is.
Senator Sifuna, I'm guiding you. If you proceed in that manner, you know exactly what will befall you. Proceed.
Speaker, let me finalize by addressing the question of some of the reasons that the President gave for what tribulations Kenyans are going through. And Mr. Speaker, for the first time, the head of state acknowledged that events outside of Kenya have a bearing on the state of the nation. And he cited the Ukraine war. And Mr. Speaker, of late, we are hearing that in fact, the war in Gaza might even affect the prices of fuel. This is a radical departure from the position that the President took during the campaigns. He, in fact, dismissed any involvement or any role of outside events, including the war in Ukraine that began before the election, in the state of the nation. That he has chosen now to turn and
Senator. No, we took note of those objections. Senator
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the statement of the President. And as I rise to support, I would like to single out a few issues that I identified with as a leader. Issues to do with the effort the government is doing in turning around the economic performance of our economy